Are you looking for some books to jump into in this last half of the year? Well, lucky you, because I just compiled a list of some of my favorite books from this year that you absolutely cannot miss before the end of the year. And genuinely, I'm so excited to be able to share these books with you because I've absolutely loved them so much and enjoyed them, and I can't wait for you to experience them too in today's episode. Hey there, friend. If this is your first time, welcome. I'm so absolutely thrilled that you are here listening to the podcast or watching this if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, possibly. I'm so thrilled to have you. My name is Shira, and I am here to help you find life-changing books and write life-changing stories. I love being able to help you create the stories that you want to write, but also helping readers find the books that they love that will really inspire them and transform their lives. I'm really passionate about that, and I'm so excited to bring some of these books to you because I've found so much value and beauty in these books. You know, today it can be so hard to find books that you actually enjoy, but that you can also glean something beautiful out of them. And that is why I've compiled these books that you must not miss before the end of this year. I'm so excited. So these are some of the books that I've enjoyed the most this year. Most of these were were pretty much all my 5-star reads from the last 6 months. 9 months? 8 months. I'm getting confused because I can't remember how many months it's been. Anyway, but these are some of my favorite books that I have really loved and I've gleaned so much from as a writer, but also as a reader, because I feel like books, truly their purpose is to make us better people. And I feel like these books have all lived up to that. For sure, for me. Before we start this video, be sure to click the links in the description of this episode or this video where you can pre-order my anthology, where you will find 11 beautiful short stories with the whole autumn vibe, reading vibe. I'm so excited about this anthology because it's like an autumn feel and theme for it. So if you love pumpkin spice lattes or tea or sweaters, or, you know, just the sound of falling rain against your window, like that whole autumn academia vibe, you will absolutely love this anthology because it's a collection of short stories that are all about novelists writing in November. And so it's got all the fall theme, but also it's about writing stories and creating a story that is beautiful and that impacts others. So I'm so excited for the release. You have a few months left to pre-order, and if you do, it will massively help the success of this book. But pre-ordering also means that you get exclusive goodies like an audiobook narration of my own story, 2 exclusive Spotify playlists that I have created just for this story, and you can only get access to that by pre-ordering, as well as a secret little recipe that actually inspired one of the elements of this story, and I'm so excited to be able to share that with you. It's actually quite delicious, so definitely check that out. In addition, you can also pop over to my Instagram where you can see exclusive snippets of my daily life as a writer and kind of like my thoughts on current reads, as well as new and upcoming books that I'm supporting. And I'm super excited about that because I have so many writer friends who are publishing new books and that I am actually getting to support them. It is so absolutely thrilling, and I'm so excited. Genuinely. So if you want to check out all that, then definitely head over to my Instagram where you can find all those things. And if you prefer listening to these episodes, follow this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts so that you can listen on the go. And if you're enjoying this in video form, definitely subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a single episode. Okay, but now diving into today's books, because I am so excited to share these books with you today. These are some of my absolute favorite books of this year, and I was surprised to find so many gold selections in this year. Genuinely, a lot of these have actually been 4 or 5 stars, and I was super surprised. But they're amazing, and I cannot wait to share them with you. Some of these are modern, some of these are classic, because I truly love to mix things up. While I do love classic books, and I personally think that there is nothing like a good classic book, there are some really good modern books that have enriched my writing so much. And even as a reader, I love reading these books because they really make me think about life in a different way and help me to see the world differently and find beauty in my own life and find beauty in just reading and have a good time while doing it. So they're spectacular. First up, and I'm going to do this in order of when I read this. So the first one that I read, actually I read this one in January, is Hello Stranger by Katherine Center. And if you've known me long enough, you know I absolutely love Katherine Center. And so I'm so excited about this book. But I'm going to be reading the blurbs of these because genuinely, if I were to summarize these books myself, you would never see the end of this. So I'm going to just read out the blurbs on my little iPad here. So bear with me. But the blurb for Hello Stranger by Katherine Center is this. Sadie Montgomery never saw what was coming. Literally. One minute, she's celebrating the biggest achievement of her life, placing as a finalist in the North American Portrait Society competition. The next, she's lying in a hospital bed, diagnosed with a probably temporary condition known as face blindness. She can see, but every face she looks at is now a jumbled puzzle of disconnected features. Imagine trying to read a book upside down and in another language. This is Sadie's new reality with every face that she sees. But as she struggles to cope, hang on to her artistic dream, work through major family issues, and take care of her beloved dog, Peanut, she falls into love, lust, a temporary obsession to distract from the real problems of life, with not one man, but two very different ones. The timing couldn't be worse. If only her life were a little bit more in focus, Sadie might be able to find her way, but perceiving anything clearly right now seems impossible, even though there are things we can only find when we aren't looking. And there are people who show up when we least expect them. And there are always other ways of seeing. Genuinely, this book is a gem. I love this book so much. Genuinely, I love Katherine Center. I have read 2 of her books, and the first one that I read was The Bodyguard. It is hilarious. If you've not read it, read it for November. That one is also recommended, so the bonus recommendation. It's spectacular for November because it takes place in like Thanksgiving time. So good. I love that book so much. And so this is one of her most recent books. Well, sorry, that was my phone. Yeah, honestly, her most recent book is The Rom-Commers. I have not read that one. However, this is the one that came out before The Rom-Commers, and it's called Hello Stranger, and I'm so delighted to be able to recommend this to you because genuinely the themes in this story are so good, and it's hilarious. Katherine Center is so spectacular, is an absolute master of the romantic comedy, and more than just giving you a love story, she really allows the character to grow. And that's something that I love about Katherine Center is that she doesn't make her stories about finding the right guy. No, it's about, like, she does give the main character a romantic interest, but the story itself is really about the main character becoming a better person, becoming a person who has more empathy and love and kindness and more understanding about the world and about life. And in this story, it's really about seeing things. Especially, I loved the theme about seeing what you want to see. So there, in one aspect of the story, because she can't see with her eyes, she's forced to see with other things in her senses, and to be able to recognize people by different things. And this same thing that's allowing her to see people differently is also impacting the way that she's seeing others and realizing how so many times we see life as one thing when it really is another. And that what we see as an obstacle may sometimes be exactly what we needed. And so this beautiful theme of really seeing life differently and accepting it when it isn't what we expect it to be, and making the best of it and making beauty out of it, even art out of it, as she's an artist, is just spectacular and so inspiring and beautiful, and I love it. This book I love so much. Now, I just do want to give a fair warning. Most of these books, I would probably not recommend them to anyone under the age of 16. This book in particular has some language and some like rude jokes, like more adult jokes. So definitely, if you're younger than 16, I wouldn't really recommend this. But if you're older than 16, I think that you would really, really enjoy this. I personally really enjoyed this book. So just keep that in mind. And again, if you guys have any thoughts, like on, you want to check out what the content stuff is and any of the details, you can absolutely head over to my bookshop.org page, where I will have it linked in the description, and that is where I have all my books that I recommend, and you can get them right there. And I also have notes on cleanness and things to just be aware of before you read, because I do think that we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are some really good books that are, you know, not Christian or things like that, but they have such good and beautiful messages. We can't really throw them out. We'd lose so much. But I do know that each person has different sensitivities, and so that's why I like to add little cleanness notes and allow you to be able to make the decision that is best for you in your stage of life or in that moment, so that you can find the book that suits you and that really will change your life wherever you are. My second recommendation is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. I read this for the first time this year. Part of me is like, why did I wait so long? And another part is like, it came when it needed to come. This book is so good. This was the first time that I read it in, I think, January, February. And it's so spectacular. And I'm going to read the blurb for you in case you don't know what it's about. It's a gothic masterpiece of tempestuous passions and dark secrets. Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre tells the story of orphaned Jane Eyre, who grows up in the home of her heartless aunt, enduring loneliness and cruelty. Their troubled childhood strengthens Jane's natural independence and spirit, which prove necessary when she finds employment as a governess to the young ward of a Byronic, brooding Mr. Rochester. As her feelings for Rochester develop, Jane gradually uncovers Thornfield Hall's terrible secret, forcing her to make a choice. Should she stay with Rochester and live with the consequences, or follow her convictions, even if it means leaving the man she loves? Now, this book is so much more than the blurb describes. It's a beautiful dive into what it means to be a woman who stands on her convictions and yet is feminine at the same time and wants to be loved and has to choose what's right. I don't know if I said that correctly, but it's such a beautiful book, and so well written. Charlotte Brontë has such a gift with words and the metaphors that are in there. I just was soaking in them. It's beautiful. But also Jane's personality and character are so delightful. I want to be more like Jane. See, here's the thing. As opposed to most characters where, for example, I love Anne of Green Gables, but for example, what Anne of Green Gables does is that she changes everybody's life, right? But by like brightening it up, you know exactly when she enters a room how she changes everything. However, with Jane, she has this quiet influence, this quiet presence, these quiet morals that dictate everything that she does. Everything that she does is done with love, but she does it so quietly and so subtly and with so much feminine beauty. Genuinely, I admire her so much. I think she's an absolutely wonderful role model, and I love her so much. Also, something that I don't hear talked about as much is her faith. Can we please talk about how strong her faith is in this story? If you've read this book, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But basically, so much of Jane Eyre's character is molded by her faith, and the decisions that she makes are defined by her faith, and the fact that she stands by her morals even if nobody else does. But she does it with so much grace and love and kindness. I genuinely want to be like Jane. She inspires me so much, and it just shines so much beauty in what would have been otherwise a really weird story. She just lightens it with so much grace and beauty. So yes, it is definitely a weird-ish story. If you're not into like gothic stories, you may not enjoy this as much. But if you go in knowing what it is, I think you will actually find it really interesting. Next up, we have The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. Oh my goodness, I love this book. I think every writer should read this because it is a book on books. It is a writer's handbook in the form of a fiction book. Definitely read this. If you haven't read this book before, just read it. On the faded island book's sign hanging over the porch of the Victorian cottage is the motto, "No man is an island, every book is a world." A.J. Fikry, the irascible owner, is about to discover just what that truly means. A.J. Fikry's life is not at all what he expected it to be. His wife has died, his bookstore is experiencing the worst sales in its history, and now his prized possession, a rare collection of Poe poems, has been stolen. That was so hard to say. Poe poems. Slowly but surely, he is isolating himself from all the people of Alice Island. From Lambiers, a well-intended police officer who has always felt kindly towards Fikry. From Ismay, his sister-in-law, who is hell-bent on saving him from his dreary self. From Amelia, the lovely and idealistic, if eccentric, nightly press sales rep who keeps on taking ferry over to Alice Island, refusing to be deterred by AJ's bad attitude. Even the books in his store have stopped holding pleasure for him. These days, AJ can only see them as a sign that the world is changing rapidly. And then a mysterious package arrives at the bookstore. It's a small package, but large in weight. It's that unexpected arrival that gives A.J. Fikry the opportunity to make his life over, the ability to see everything anew. It doesn't take long for the locals to notice the change overcoming A.J., or for that determined sales rep, Amelia, to see her curmudgeonly new client in a new light. Or for the wisdom of all those books to become again the lifeblood of AJ's world, or for everything to twist again into a version of his life that he didn't see coming. As surprising as it is moving, The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry is an unforgettable tale of transformation and second chances, an irresistible affirmation of why we read and why we love. This book is a gem. It should be a classic, truly. The way that it explores people's thoughts and helps you see everyone's story as a chapter of their own. There's so many quotes from this book that I'm like, please, like, it's so rich and beautiful. I wish I could bring some of these quotes, but I didn't write them down before coming on, so I can't remember them off the top of my head. But there are so many memorable, beautiful books and this quotes, and it will help you see people and books in a completely new light. And if you are not a book person, this book will make you fall madly in love with reading. And if you are already madly in love with reading, you will fall head over heels even more in love with reading, because it truly is an homage to writers and bookstores and reading and the wonder and the transformation that books can have on lives. So for me, this was a life-changing book because I saw books in a different way that I'd never seen them before. And I also saw bookstores, believe it or not. The thing that stuck with me the most was bookstores. I was able to kind of step into the mindset and see what it's like to be a bookstore owner, an independent bookstore owner, and to see how precious these books are to these people who make their livelihoods off of this. And I don't know, it just gave me such a genuine appreciation for how powerful words on a page can be and how it can change lives and transform communities and bring people together in ways that only books can do. So I highly recommend this. Again, 16 and up, probably because of language, as well as I think one scene or something like that. I skipped it personally, so I don't know if anything actually happened, but I was like, well, I think this is getting a little close. I'm going to skip this portion, but I highly recommend it. Do not miss this because it is an absolute gem. Next up, we have The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. And this is such a good plot. It is a little confusing, not gonna lie, but it's also a really good plot once you get kind of the hang of it. If you can kind of stick with it, it's so good. Again, a little bit of like a Southern Gothic kind of feel. So if that's not your cup of tea, you may not enjoy this that much, but if you know what to expect when you're coming in, you will love this. So here's the blurb. A woman risks everything to end her family's centuries-old curse, solve her mother's disappearance, and find love in this mesmerizing novel from the New York Times bestselling author of Spells for Forgetting. In the small mountain town of Jasper, North Carolina, June Farrow is waiting for fate to find her. The Farrow women are known for their thriving flower farm and the mysterious curse that has plagued their family line. The whole town remembers the madness that led to Susanna Farrow's disappearance, leaving June to be raised by her grandmother and haunted by rumors. It's been a year since June started seeing and hearing things that weren't there. Faint wind chimes, a voice calling her name, and a mysterious door opening out of nowhere. The signs of what June always knew was coming. But June is determined to end the curse once and for all, even if she must sacrifice finding love and having a family of her own. After her grandmother's death, June discovers a series of cryptic clues regarding her mother's decade-old appearance. Except they only lead to more questions. But could the door she once assumed was a hallucination be the answer she was looking for? The next time it appears, June realizes she can touch it and walk past the threshold. When she does, she embarks on a journey that will not only change both the past and the future, but will also uncover the lingering mysteries of her small town and entangle her heart in an epic star-crossed love. Genuinely, this was such an incredible ride of a book. The plot itself is mind-boggling in the sense that you're going to be switching a lot between past and present, and basically this woman has to go to the past to fix the present. It is so cool. And so if you're a huge fan of like time travel kind of things, you'll love it. And so I am so excited for you to be able to read this book. It truly is such a beautiful book too, because it really talks about how one generation affects the next. And this is like on steroids in this book, simply because literally the generations are overlapping, and what one Pharaoh woman does will affect the next Pharaoh woman, and they all have to work together somehow. That's all I'm going to say. I probably have said too much, but it is such an interesting plot, and I enjoyed it so much, and the theme is beautiful. Like at the end, I was like wanting to cry. It was such a heartfelt theme and tale. Okay, next up, we have The Enigma of Room 622 by Joël Dicker. My goodness. Okay. So, this book is so good, and I know you guys are probably thinking I'm going crazy, but it is so insanely good. One of my favorite novels ever. This got to my favorites list, like all-time favorites list. And here's the thing. I love Agatha Christie, but this book is like, and yes, I'm going to say it, this book is, in my opinion, better than Agatha Christie. It's like more literary fiction-y than Agatha Christie. It's so good. So good. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like Agatha Christie plus make it a thriller, and also combine it with a love story and a philosophical dive into what makes people do what they do. It's so good. So absolutely exquisite, and kind of also an exploration into like the writer's journey and thought process. From beginning to end, literally from beginning to end, it is a masterpiece in my humble opinion. So here's the blurb. One night in December, a corpse is found in room 622 of the Hotel Verbier. I should say the French names right. Okay. please bear with me because there's a lot of French names. This is originally a French novel. I should point that out. This was originally a French novel that got translated into English. The audiobook I listened to, and it was spectacular, like absolutely spectacular. So listen to it, please. One night in December, a corpse is found in room 622 of the Hotel Verbier, a luxury hotel in the Swiss Alps. A police investigation begins without definite end, and public interest wanes with the passage of time. Years later, the writer Joël Dicker, Switzerland's most famous literary ingenue, arrives at that same hotel to recover from a bad breakup, mourn the death of his longtime publisher, and begin his next novel. Little does Joël know that his expertise in the craft of the thriller will come in handy when he finds himself investigating the crime. He'll need a Watson, of course. In this case, that would be Scarlett, the beautiful guest and aspiring novelist from the next room who joins in the search while he tries to solve another puzzle, the plot of his next book. Meanwhile, in the wake of his father's passing, Macaire Besner is set to take over as the president of the largest bank in Switzerland. The succession captivates the news media, and the future looks bright until it doesn't. The bank's board, including a certain Lev Levovich, Geneva's very own Jay Gatsby, have other plans, and Macaire's race to the top soon becomes a race against time. A Matryoshka doll of mystery built with the precision of a Swiss watch. Joël Dicker presents a diabolically addictive thriller where a love triangle, a power struggle, shocking betrayals, and dangerous envy play out against the backdrop of a not-so-quiet Switzerland, where the truth twists and turns into something no reader will see coming. A European phenomenon, Dicker's latest page-turner is his most personal novel yet. Genuinely, this is such a good book. It's unusual, it's original, and yet it has all the elements of the stories that we love. It has all the Agatha Christie mystery to it, but at the same time, it's got like thriller elements to it where it's a race against time. And parts of this novel are like set in one timeline, and then other pieces of the novel are set in another timeline, so you don't know what actually happened. We know that there's a mystery and that someone was killed, but how everything happens is so mysterious, and we're so confused at some points. And yet, when we actually get to the climax, it is spectacular. It's like, oh, so good, because it's nothing like you expected, and yet you should have seen it coming, which is the mark of a good mystery, truly. It's so good. Absolutely delightful. I also love how Joël Dicker really gave his characters a lot of depth in his mysteries, or thrillers. I feel like he really delved into their backstories and who they are and why they do things, which is something that I feel is missing sometimes in thrillers and mysteries in general. So it was so delightful to see that explored in this book. You have to read this. It's set in Europe, and so if you love Europe, if you love mysteries, this is like a European summer feel, if I'm not mistaken. If you love mysteries, Agatha Christie thrillers, or any like foreign novels, you will love this so much. It's an absolute treat, and from beginning to end, I was just delighted with it. I got to the end, and my mom got scared because I was squealing and going over, like screaming over this book so much. I was like, this is so good. So my mom thought I was crying. It was just such a good book. Like, the ending is epic and beautiful and heartrending and beautiful and creative and jarring in the best way. I just can't promote it highly enough. I don't think there are any scenes in this book. I may be wrong, but I think there are no scenes. I don't believe there's any language either, but don't quote me on it. So you can definitely check my bookshop.org to see any notes on each of these books, but I highly recommend it because it is spectacular. Next up, we have Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy, which is another classic that I read for the first time this year. And I love it so much. This is a beautiful book that, honestly, it gave such a unique view of life. And the pastoral feel of this novel was just delightful. And the stories, the way that this story was told, I just enjoyed it so much. And something that I actually was surprised to like so much was actually the male romantic interest. The story starts with him, but it's kind of about him, but it's also about the female main character. And I'll explain more. I'm going to read the blurb right now so that I can explain a little bit more. But independent and spirited Bathsheba Everdeen has come to Weatherbury to take up her position as a farmer on the largest estate in the area. Her bold presence draws 3 very different suitors: the gentleman farmer Boldwood, soldier seducer Sergeant Troy, and the devoted shepherd Gabrielle Oak. Each, in contrasting ways, unsettles her decisions and complicates her life, and tragedy ensues, threatening the stability of the whole community. The first of his works, set in the fictional county of Wessex, Hardy's novel of swift passion and slow courtship is imbued with his evocative descriptions of rural life and landscapes, and with unflinching honesty about the truth behind strong men and women. This is such a good book. I feel like this blurb doesn't even do it justice, but this is such a sweet, quiet story, but at the same time there's drama in it, and like a huge, I don't even know if I could call it a love triangle. It's like a love square or something. I don't know. There's a lot of men involved, but something that I unexpectedly loved was Gabrielle Oak, who, like, you pretty much start the story with him. Even though they make Bathsheba like the main character, I would say that Gabrielle is the main character because a lot of this story is set from his perspective. So I know a lot of feminists like this book because Bathsheba definitely is more of a strong female character, but I think this was one time where the strong female character was actually done so well and accurately, in the sense that you could see the good things of being a strong female character, but you also saw some really bad things about being a strong female character. And it was so realistic in the sense that she really did pay for some of her decisions, which were kind of rash. And unlike a lot of books with strong female characters, you can see the consequences, because a lot of books nowadays, they'll have this bold woman who just, throws herself into the fight, even if it isn't her fight. But with this book, you really see how there are good things to being confident and like the strong female character, but there are also a lot of consequences that come from making rash decisions and trying to do everything yourself and going for what you feel as opposed to what actually exists, and going by your feelings instead of, a stable like morals or things like that. And so something else that I loved too was Gabrielle Oak. I love his character. You wouldn't expect him to be the typical romantic interest character that you would love. I didn't expect to like him so much, but he was so quiet and yet noble. Genuinely one of the most noble characters I ever know, but so quiet. And his quiet presence was just so beautiful, even in the whole thing. So that was just something that I admired so much. Thomas Hardy did such a spectacular job depicting this country story so well. I genuinely enjoyed it, and there were so many twists and turns on the way there that you're like, oh my goodness, you're literally left slack-jawed at some points. And there's also a movie version of it, so I kind of rewarded myself from after reading the book by watching the movie, and that was spectacular. I genuinely enjoyed it so much. I think this one stars Carey Mulligan, if I'm not mistaken. We also have Caraval by Stephanie Garber on this list, and I'm so excited because I love this book so much. The blurb is, Scarlet Dragna has never left the tiny island where she and her sister Tella live with their powerful and cruel father. Now, Scarlet's father has arranged a marriage for her, and Scarlet thinks her dreams of seeing Caraval, the faraway once-a-year performance where the audience participates in the show, are over. But this year, Scarlet's long-dreamt-of invitation finally arrives. With the help of a mysterious sailor, Tella whisks Scarlet away to the show. Only as soon as they arrive, Tella is kidnapped by Caraval's mastermind organizer, Legend. It turns out that this season's Caraval revolves around Tella, and whoever finds her first is the winner. Scarlet has been told that everything that happens during Caraval is only an elaborate performance. Nevertheless, she becomes enmeshed in a game of love, heartbreak, and magic. And whether Caraval is real or not, Scarlet must find Tella before the 5 nights of the game are over, or a dangerous domino effect of consequences will be set off, and her beloved sister will disappear forever. I personally loved this book. This is the first of the Caraval series, and my sister was the one that really recommended this book. But I genuinely loved this so much. She didn't enjoy this one as much as the second book. I didn't enjoy the second book as much as the first book. This is still my favorite, even though I enjoyed the third book as well, finale. The first book is probably my favorite. I love the themes of sacrifice and the beautiful love that Scarlet has for her sister and the people that she loves. She's so loyal and devoted. I admire her as a character, as a person, so much. And also the romance with Julian. Can we take a moment to appreciate that? It is so romantic. Gotta be one of the most romantic books I've read in a really long time. So good. I was falling over head over heels for the guy. My word. And he's not even my type. He really isn't. But the romance is so well written and so adorable and so good that I genuinely loved it. Now, just a disclaimer, in the first book, it doesn't get too sensual or anything. They are pretty touchy, but it shouldn't be anything major. Later in the series, there are a couple of interesting scenes that I'm like, that was a little far, girl. But I definitely would recommend that you read Caraval. If you enjoy Caraval, definitely read the rest of the series. Just be aware that there are some iffy things, kind of, at least I found them kind of a little bit more, much for me, scene-wise and things like that. Nothing actually happens, but I did think they were a little bit more sensual than I personally like them to be, a little bit more spicy than I normally like my books to be. But other than that, this is such an absolutely delightful book, and the themes explored are so beautiful. It really just made me have such a good ride reading this book. It's delightful. You'll be hooked from beginning to end, and I personally really loved this. Another book that this one I read during the summer is The Otherworld by Abbie Emmons. And the blurb for this one is, Orca Munro wants only one thing for her 18th birthday, to experience the Otherworld, the mysterious mainland across the sea that her father has forbidden her from visiting. Growing up in a lighthouse on a remote island, Orca has lived isolated from the world, until one day she finds a cell phone watched up on the beach. Orca has her first conversation with Jack Stevenson, a young man whose older brother, Adam, has gone missing after crashing his seaplane off the coast. Orca becomes Jack's lifeline and his reason to hope that Adam is still alive. While her father is away, she scours the island for the missing pilot, determined to help Jack find his brother and prove to her father that she's strong enough to take on the world. One stormy night, Orca finds Adam Stevenson collapsed on her doorstep. As she nurses him back to health, she finds herself spellbound by his inquiring mind and rugged good looks. Had to be. Simultaneously, Adam is captivated by her wild beauty and pure heart. But with a 10-year age gap between them and her father's determination to keep Orca protected from outsiders, Adam knows that they can never be together. Resigned to give Orca up, Adam returns to the mainland, but Jack refuses to leave her trapped in the lighthouse. Blind to the fact that his brother is in love with her, Jack offers to show Orca the world she's always dreamed of. But when she leaves her island for the first time, Orca begins to realize that the mainland may hold more dark secrets than she ever imagined, and that the two brothers she helped bring back together may be the very people she tears apart. This was such a sweet, cute story that I enjoyed reading over the summer. I would read it at the beach, so that was so fun. While this wasn't one of my favorite books, that I would be like, oh my goodness, this was my absolute favorite books of all time, it was so sweet, and I I really did enjoy a lot of the chemistry that between the brothers and the chemistry between Orca and each one of them. It's really beautiful, and I really did enjoy reading this, especially at the beach. Such a cool experience reading this at the beach. Next up, we have The Labors of Hercules Beal by Gary D. Schmidt. What a good book. This is like one of my rave books. Rave reviews? Rave? I don't know. One of the books that I absolutely loved the most. And the reason for this is because it really feels like a children's classic. And I truly believe that it will become a children's classic someday. And so let me give you the blurb so I can talk even more about it. Herc Beal knows who he's named after. A mythical hero. But he's no superhero. He's the smartest kid in class. So when his homeroom teacher at his new middle school gives him the assignment of duplicating the mythical Hercules' amazing feats in real life, he's skeptical. After all, there are no Nemean lions on Cape Cod, and not a single Hydra in sight. Missing his parents terribly and wishing his older brother wasn't working all the time, Herc figures out how to take his new first steps along the road that the great Hercules himself once walked. Soon, new friends, human and animal, are helping him. And though his mythical role model performed his 12 labors by himself, Herc begins to see that he may not have to go it alone. This is such a spectacular book. So beautiful. Genuinely, it's hilarious, and listen to the audiobook because the audiobook is spectacular. The narrator does a wonderful, amazing, like I don't even have the words. It was beautiful. So good. And the themes in this story are spectacular. And so you see him overcome crazy feats, but like in a way overcoming himself, overcoming his fears, overcoming the things that he thinks are insurmountable, that are often things that we face every day. You see him overcome them and create beauty again out of brokenness, out of what would have been tragedy as he deals with the death of his parents and with grief. It is such a beautiful, profound, and yet simple book. I genuinely would recommend this to anybody who wants to just have a delightful time, like a good laugh, but also wants to find something profound within the story. You'll find it here. This is also a middle grade novel, so if you are under the age of 16, you can absolutely read this. It's so sweet and funny. I don't know if it matters, but he just does use the word stupid sometimes. That's the only thing that I would say, in case that's something that your family has. But other than that, it's a beautiful story with such a wonderful, wonderful message. Also, this is a great book for little boys. So little boys, I don't know. I definitely recommend it. Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt is another book that I so enjoyed this year. My sister found it for me. She didn't read it, but she was like, I think you'll enjoy it. And I'd heard a little bit about it, and I actually read it. Such a beautiful book. It really is. And so here's the blurb. After Tova Sullivan's husband died, she began working the night shifts at Sewell Bay Aquarium, mopping floors and tidying up. Keeping busy has always helped her cope, which she's been doing since her 18-year-old son, Eric, mysteriously vanished on a boat in Puget Sound over 30 years ago. Tova becomes acquainted with the curmudgeonly Marcellus, a giant Pacific octopus living at the aquarium. Marcellus knows more than anyone can imagine, but wouldn't dream of lifting one of his 8 arms for his human captors, until he forms a remarkable friendship with Tova. Ever the detective, Marcellus deduces what happened the night Tova's son disappears. And now, Marcellus must use every trick in his old invertebrate body he can muster to unearth the truth for her before it's too late. This is genuinely such a beautiful book. The perspective of the octopus, parts of it are actually told from the perspective of Marcellus, the octopus. And those were my favorite chapters ever, even though it sounds weird. But it was really wonderful and delightful. I highly recommend this book if you want a story about hope and about family, like found family. So good. It's given from the perspective of 3 people. I'm not going to say who they are because then I'll spoil things. But it's given from the perspective of 3 people and told so well and so beautifully. And surprisingly, this is something of a story, like a pro-life story. I was super surprised to find that in a secular book. But there is this theme of these women giving up a lot of their careers and life to be able to raise these children and to give them their best. I'm sounding so abstract, but I don't want to give away parts of the story, but it's so beautiful and loving and so about finding community in the most unexpected places. Such a good story. I don't think there was anything I needed to skip in those, but again, check out my bookshop.org to be able to see all the cleanness notes and everything on that. And lastly, we have The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. I loved reading this book. It is such an easy read, but it's so delightful, truly. And here's the blurb. I'll just give you the blurb and then I'll talk about it. After living through a dumpster fire of a Valentine's Day, Emily Hornby escapes to her grandmother's house for some comfort and consolation pint of Ben & Jerry's. She passes out on the couch, but when she wakes up, she's back home in her own bed. And it's Valentine's Day all over again. And the next day, another nightmare V-Day. Emily is stuck in some sort of time loop nightmare that she can't wake up from as she rewatches her boyfriend, Josh, cheat on her day after day. In addition to Josh's recurring infidelity, Emily can't get away from the enigmatic Nick, who she keeps running into, sometimes literally in unfortunate ways. How many days can one girl passively watch her life go up in flames? And when something good starts to come out of these terrible days, what happens when the universe stops doling out do-overs? Genuinely, this book was so fun. It's hilarious and sweet. The romance in this story is amazing. Nick is so good. Like, he's so snarky and funny. I genuinely learned so much about writing romance from this book. So, but I honestly loved it so much. It was such a quick read, and it was funny and sweet. There were some themes, I guess, that I wasn't completely on board with. A little bit of rebellion, I guess, in some ways, which I'm not crazy about. But I loved the theme of, like, taking advantage of the day and doing the things that scare you and being your authentic self instead of trying to be the person that you think you should be or the thing that everyone thinks you should be. Be the person that you want to be. Someone that looks back on their life and says, wow, I did that. That's amazing. I accomplished these things. I lived, you know, instead of trying to play it safe in life. And so that's something that I absolutely loved in this book. And again, the romance was delightful. I literally just sped through it. It was such a good beach read. I was reading that one at the beach and enjoyed it so much. So these are all my 11 recommendations that you must not miss before the end of the year. I hope that this has been helpful and that you've found some new and exciting reads to enjoy for your year. And so I'm so excited for you to be able to just dive into these books. Again, if you want to check out any notes, cleanness notes, or hear a little bit more on my thoughts on it, then you can definitely head over to my bookshop.org where you can find all the books in neat little bookshelves or like collections. And specifically this one, I will have a collection set up for this so that you can see all the notes right away and get all the books that you want to get. So I'm so excited for you, and I'm so thrilled that you were able to just tune into this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, continue to live, give, and repeat. Don't forget to subscribe. I should have said that before. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and ring the bell so you don't miss another episode, and I will see you next time. Love you guys.